Lynn, thank you. That was fabulous. This is the book, and Lynn has kindly consented to take some questions, of course. So come right up, right afterward. We have them right here.
Happy to sign, happy to answer questions on Sally or anything.
Let me recruit
I just want to say that luckily I don't have to say to this group, what I normally say when I'll be happy to take questions is, I'll answer anything, including what is Barbara Walters really like.
Thank God I don't have to ask that one. Let me ask the first question, and then I'll give it to Marlene Sanders. Can you hear me now? Is this on now?
Here's the other one. Here's the other one. It's better. It's okay.
And we'll have to wander around with that. So the first question is, Linda Ellerby, a news Silurian and recent speaker, told me just the other day that she views you as one of the unsung heroes of women in journalism because you refuse to take a lot of guff from a lot of assignment editors, et cetera. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about standing up as a real news person and whether you would tell people to do it the same way again.
I don't feel unsung. I feel as if, but thanks to Linda. Linda came to Channel 2 a little bit after I had been there. The truth is, there was no other way I could be. I just am a reasonably direct person. It's probably another reason why Sally and I got along so well. And you know, there were the Marlenes, of which there were very few, who had come before us, and there were other women, but I didn't have any role models really before I got there. And I understood right away that it was important for us to be role models. And I understood right away that in many cases, these guys didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And, you know, before I got to ABC, or before I got to Channel 2, I had, at the Associated Press, I did 10 years worth of a calendar called the Woman's Calendar, some of you may recall. A wonderful spiral-bound 5x8, 6x9 engagement calendar. Another reporter, Urate Kazikas, and I did together, in which we documented all the wonderful things that had happened to women in history. Because I remember in high school, there might have been one line in my American history book that said some version of, and then a bunch of crazy ladies and bloomers ran around to get women the right to vote. And that's all I remember. And then suddenly I'm in New York, and I'm at the AP, and it's 1969, and there's this thing called the Women's Liberation Front that only women were allowed to cover. For once, we had a little bit of an advantage. And I literally was one of the reporters sitting in a room while people were talking about women's issues and feminism, a very new concept to me. And I found myself writing, and then they this, and then they did that, and then in the terms of the great Joan O'Reilly, the click happened. I had the click of recognition, and I thought, oh my God, they are I. They're talking about me. And I had never thought of the word feminism. And then I started reading history, and then I learned about the 19th century suffragists who totally became my hero. And of course, Susan B. Anthony is my eternal hero. I've written a couple of books about her. To me, this was just in my DNA. It took a while to recognize it, but it was there. And I just didn't think there was any way of being, and yes, I do encourage women today to speak out. I am horrified when I hear some of the stories that are still going on. It is 2014, last I checked, and I thought we had won all these battles. And it turns out, you know, ever vigilant, as Emerson said, ever vigilant. Just keep on going. I'll repeat the question if I can hear it. I can hear you, Marlene.
Wow.
Now that I'm teaching at NYU and teaching broadcast journalism, these students think that we solved all of the problems, right, and there are no more issues. How would you evaluate the position of women in broadcast journalism today?
Well, I think in many ways the playing field is leveler, if that's a more level. I went on Howie Kurtz's show a couple of weeks ago when Diane stepped down, when David Muir took over. And he said to me, is it a bad thing that there's now not a woman as one of the 3 major anchors? And I said, no, it's not a bad thing for the simple reason that nobody's watching the evening news. And those eyeballs that the networks are desperate for are not there. My kids don't watch the evening news. They didn't watch it when I was on the air. So this is not the prime thing. The prime thing is other times of day and the web and everything else, as you well know. So I don't think numbers are necessarily significant. I do think, I've always said, what we desperately need is more women in management. What we desperately need, and that hasn't happened. I'm also worried about the way women seem to have to look on the air at certain networks. I think big lips and big boobs are just fine, but really it shouldn't be a qualification for being a news anchor. And it is kind of a joke. So I worry about that. I don't worry so much about one very important thing, though, which is content. There were no stories about breast cancer, about women's bodies until we got there. There were no stories about battered spouses. There were no stories, or very, very few, until women started making their voices heard in the newsroom. And I think, man, has that changed. The very fact that baseball teams can wear pink uniforms today, to me, says quite a lot. And I think that's largely to do with the presence of women in newsrooms across the country. I think we've all done our part in that. But yeah, there's still a way to go, I'm sorry to say. Mike?
Lynn, as wonderful as Sally Ride was, do you think she did a disservice to her preference and gender by not coming out during her lifetime?
Well, that was that was raised by a very small cohort of LGBT folks when it came out that Sally was gay after she died. There were a couple of people, and I cannot do this scientifically, but from everything I've read on the web, which is a lot, and people I've talked to, there were just a few people who said, how dare she, as a gay woman, not come out, and she could have been so great for the cause. And the truth is, she could have been, no question about it. But I believe that if Sally had done that, the tiny little bit of privacy she had reserved for herself would have been totally gone. This is a woman, you know, in psychology, there's this thing called the Myers-Briggs scale. And on one side are the I's for introverts, and on the other side are the E's for extroverts. And I would guess that everyone in this room is an E. We like being in public. We like talking. We get something back from people responding to us. Sally was very much the other way. Every single speech she gave, and she must have given tens of thousands over the years. She traveled to Europe. She traveled everywhere promoting the space program. She had to psych herself up for every single one. She spoke out forcefully for women's rights, for Title IX, for saving planet Earth, all sorts of things. And I think this was just one area where she felt, leave me alone. So yeah, she would have helped that cause, but most people I've talked to since she died have said, doesn't matter, we'll claim her now. And that'll make a difference. And by the way, the fact that we have to say she's the only openly gay astronaut we know of. Clearly there have been others, clearly. Look at the numbers.
Anybody else?
You have a full plate, obviously, but is there anything new you're working on now?
I'm working on trying to get my life back together. No, I have a couple of projects in my mind, none of which I'm afraid I'm going to discuss at the moment, but there'll be another one. I just haven't figured out what. And I'm not sure if it'll be a book or some other format. I'm just not sure. But there will be something. I like working at things that I care about. And I love not having an assignment desk to tell me what to do.
Lynn, where is the space program now, and will we ever see a woman on the moon?
We are sort of lost in space, I think it's fair to say right now. Interestingly, most people in this country are probably not aware we do have an International Space Station up there in permanent orbit. It is permanently inhabited, often by women, usually by a combination of Americans and Europeans and Asians. And the space station is amazing, the stuff that's going on up there. But we don't seem to have a real direction at the moment. The President, Obama, has expressed enormous interest in space and essentially done nothing about it. And the Congress is not prepared to act in that regard right now. The space budget is minuscule compared to the rest of the budget. It's a teeny, teeny fraction. And yet they keep getting cut back. So I don't know. Will we ever see a woman on the moon? Oh, yeah. We'll probably go to the moon on the way to Mars or some version of that. Sally, who was frequently asked to write reports on the future of NASA, talked about the fact that all future space has to be international cooperation. It is just absolutely nuts for any one country to go it alone. We've got to do it together. And that the first priority should be planet Earth. From her view up there, she saw what she called the thin blue line of our atmosphere encircling Earth, realized how fragile this planet is. She said it looked as if someone had taken a royal blue crayon and drawn it around the Earth. And that's all that protects us from the harsh reality of outer space. She would sometimes change the metaphor. She called it the atmosphere as thin as the fuzz on a tennis ball. And she said it's Earth's spacesuit. And that we should use space as a platform to look back and do things here. But then she said we should absolutely explore the rest of the cosmos and do as much robotically as we can. You don't need to send humans up for everything. I should also point out that Sally's commander on both of her missions, Bob Crippen, the very model of a fighter pilot, told me that he learned very distinctly from Sally never to use the phrase manned spaceflight. Human spaceflight will do just fine. Thank you very much. One more, yeah, Scotty?
What do you think she would have said?
Scotty, let me give you the mic.
I can project. I'm telling you. Okay. What do you think she would have said about the fact that the popular pop culture in movies, it's always women in space? We've got Bullock, and then we have what's her name, who's got the TV show now about Halle Berry. Do you think she would have had a response to the fact that the most successful astronaut movies deal with women being the astronauts?
I think she would have liked the idea. I think she would have been horrified at the lack of science in the movie Gravity. Gravity, which I thought was a great movie, was not exactly science. You know, when Sandra Bullock takes off her clothes and she gets back into the spacecraft and she's wearing a cute little bikini underwear thing. You know, what astronauts wear when they walk in space, when they float in space, is this long underwear with tubes in it for cooling and everything. It just doesn't look anything like that. But she would have liked the fact that it got people talking about it. And I think she would have loved the fact that women were there. You know, all the tests show that women, in a way, actually acclimatize better. And also women's lighter weight and smaller stature generally saves fuel. There's a lot of reason to be flying women. But, you know, Sally left NASA a year after the Challenger explosion because she was meant to fly on another mission. She didn't want to wait a year while NASA was down and reorganizing she didn't want to wait a full year to fly again and train all over again. And she went off and did many other things. She often said that she was wonderful talking to children. She loved talking to kids. She particularly liked the fact there were no filters, so that the first question kids would ask was a question adults wanted to ask but never would, which was, how do you go to the bathroom in space? And she had a great answer, which was, just imagine you're sitting on a vacuum cleaner. It's great. But she would also, she told kids the best thing about space was weightlessness. You could do 35 somersaults in a row in a room like this. And she also would say to kids, you're the ones that are going to go to Mars. And that's a wonderful thing. And then one time she paused and she said, I wish it would have been me. I wish it would have been Sally also. It would have been great, but we now have generations of kids who can learn about her and be just like her and do even better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. That was just terrific. As you all know, you come up in a second and get the book. I have, I was negligent. I wanted to introduce our new board members, Wendy Schleich, Carol Lawson, Barbara Lovenheim, and Ralph Blumenthal, if they would all stand up for a second. Bill Deal. Anyway, I hope these new board members will recruit you guys to help us with the contest and everything else. And our next speaker will be Lucinda Franks on Tuesday, October 14th. We love direct women here at the Silurians. So she'll be talking about her new book and, of course, journalism and Bob Morgenthau and all that. So don't forget to give Betsy Ashton your name tags and come see Lynn now. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. That was great. Thank you. That was really
Is that okay?
terrific.
Great.
And you were so good about splitting it.
Good.
It was just right.
Did what you wanted.